Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Gina Smrecki. I am the events manager at Nuspire, and I'm happy to be your host for today's live session. Today's webinar is always a popular topic as we look at Nuspire's threat findings from last quarter and share our analysis on the current trends in cybercrime. The full threat landscape report did go live this morning and is now available to download from our website. So I'm going to go ahead and share a link out to that right now for those of you that are joining, if you'd like to take a look at the full report. So if you have questions during the presentation today, go ahead and submit them. We'll try to leave a few minutes at the end for your questions. And then also, just so you know, we will send out an email tomorrow with a link to watch the recording of the session that you can use to share or rewatch if you missed parts of today's session. So at this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our speakers today, Josh Smith and Justin Hurd. Josh is a cyber threat analyst at Nuspire who works closely in organizational threat landscapes, curating threat intelligence and authoring Nuspire's quarterly threat landscape report. Josh is currently pursuing his master's degree in cybersecurity technology. Previously, he served with the U.S. Navy as an operations specialist with 14 years of service. He has been quoted in Forbes, CSO Online, Channel Futures, Dark Reading, and others. Justin is our Director of Security Operations. He works to develop and deliver intelligence at Nuspire. Justin has over 13 years of experience in cybersecurity and has developed methodologies and tools for industry-based threat modeling. He worked previously for 6 years as a defense contractor, as a security engineer and network administrator. So I will go ahead and give it to Josh to kick things off.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We have a lot of information to get through today. So let's start off with covering what our agenda is. We're going to go through what the methodology and overview is of how we come up with the data for our report. We're going to take a look at our data sets. We have 3 specific ones that we take a look at, which is the malware, botnet, and then exploit section. At the end of each one of those, Justin's going to cover some proactive detections and mitigation measures. And then we are going to go ahead and cover a specific industry. It's a trend we started at the beginning of the year. And for this particular quarter's report, we're looking at the hospitality industry. And then after that, we're going to wrap it up with some conclusions and recommendations. Go ahead and turn this over to Justin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Gina. I'm just going to go over quick the methodologies and overview around how we collect the data and what we're doing with it. Ultimately, we're collecting all the data we have from our systems within our SIM. We're collecting some open source intelligence as well to build these numbers out, to develop trends. We're processing that data. We also use this data to build detections and prepare us for new attacks that may be coming down the pipe. We evaluate this data and ultimately disseminate it in multiple fashions, this being one of our favorite fashions through the quarterly threat report, where we'll talk through the trends, malware, ransomware, exploits to be aware of and that we see trending in different directions. So I will pass it back to Josh for malware.
Thank you, Justin. And as we take a look at malware, our first data set, there were over 1.7 million malware events that we detected during Q3 for 522 unique variants. And there was roughly about a 5%, close to 6% decrease in total activity when compared against Q2. When you look at the activity, though, it really kind of remained stable throughout Q3 with that slight decrease. But towards the end of the quarter, began to look like it was trending back up. Look at our top 5 malware detections. Specifically, there's a big shift we've been seeing here over the past couple quarters towards JavaScript variants. As we saw Microsoft get involved and take away the ability for threat actors to use things like VBA agents and macros, they've really had to shift their tactics here. And one of the things that we start to see leading the way here are JavaScript variants. With that being said, something that we did see a big spike in activity in during Q3 here was specifically a Microsoft Office remote code execution being tracked as CVE 2017-11-88-2. Basically, what that means that 2017, if you're not familiar with, is that's when the vulnerability was initially announced. So despite patches being available for over 5 years, This is still being actively attacked and being sought out after by these threat actors. If they are able to execute on this, it allows them to execute remote code, install payloads, they can modify data, they can create new accounts on victim machines. We did see some other activity too on another similar remote code execution, CVE 2018-0798, using similar methods. In general, there should always be a focus on your Microsoft products anytime that there are new patches released, as threat actors are looking to exploit these and take advantage of them because of the large market share, obviously, that Microsoft has when it comes within the Office space. We'll talk a little bit more into the presentation here about Microsoft Patch Tuesdays within the exploit section. Another section we do want to talk about here when it comes to malware is our ransomware. That's always big on everyone's mind. It's one of the things that gets the biggest headlines. We did see a slight decrease in ransomware activity, specifically with their extortion publications from Q2 to Q3. If you're not familiar with why we're tracking extortion publications versus just generalized attacks, those extortion publications are when the threat actors have actually launched a successful attack, they've stolen information, and they're now publicizing that they have data from an organization. We feel that's a good metric to track to know those really successful attacks that are out there. So with that, our top 5 organizations or ransomware gangs are right there that are listed, with Lockbit leading the way. Even with Lockbit leading the way, we did see a 7% decrease from Q2 to Q3, but they're still leading the way. Clop is another ransomware gang that's known for tracking specifically new vulnerabilities as they're announced. We did see a large increase in their activity in between Q1 and Q2, about a 65% increase, and they're still maintaining that trend. Clop is still one that you're going to see in the headlines here very frequently. We did see some changes within our top 5, specifically in our last 2 between Bion, Lion, and Black Basta ransomware gangs fell out and were replaced by 8base and Akira ransomware. Alpha V, or Black Cat as they're also called, they maintained a pretty steady position and roughly did the same amount of attacks. That name may sound very familiar though, because they were the ones that were responsible and claimed credit for the MGM attack. As we look at something like 8base though, 8base has had a huge surge in activity, almost 165% increase compared against the Q2. And they were first emerged early in 2023. They're likely a name you're going to hear a lot more of in the future. Same thing with Akira. Akira made a big surge in the beginning of the year, and we did see a 12% increase in their activity. Notably, they're targeting things like the Cisco ASA 0-day that came out during Q3. Likely going to continue to see these names continue to grow unless they're countered by law enforcement. One thing we did want to look at is Black Cat or Alpha V, specifically because they were involved in the very highly publicized MGM Resorts attack. You may not know this, but what they are is a ransomware as a service, or RAS models they call that, and they have multiple extortion techniques that they utilize. They actually have an affiliate program is what lures in a lot of their initial access brokers to initially get into an organization. With that, they give their affiliates up to 90% of the ransom. So it really does lure in threat actors to come in and do work for them. That's one of the reasons why you'll see them continue with their popularity. As mentioned, they did perform the attack on the MGM Resorts. We're going to talk more about that in the hospitality section later. But they're suspected to be operating out of Russia and Eastern Europe. Overall, we did see an increase in activity when compared against Q2, and we're likely to continue to see that unless they're countered by law enforcement.
From a malware mitigation and response aspect, endpoint protection is a very nice way to try to detect lateral movement and different techniques that may be used by some of these malware variants. Network segregation, part of ransomware and other malware is to laterally move across the network. If you can have good network segregation inside your environment, you can kind of stop the effects to hitting certain segments of that network, and then beef up security in segments that may have more sensitive data or may be able to stop operations. The last one here is cybersecurity awareness and training. This is very important, but often overlooked. Their users are a vulnerability to an organization, as they can be, phished. There's phishing attempts. There's emails that can be sent to try to get more access into the system. So that's just another way we can help to mitigate malware in different environments.
Moving to our next section, botnet. Specifically, as we look at Q3, we saw a little bit over 2.2 million detections. The big thing from here is we saw roughly a 67% increase in activity when we compare against Q2. That does sound very large. I do want to point out that Q2 was kind of quiet compared to what we normally see. So what we did have is a bit of a return to norm. And then on top of that, we did see more activity from the Torpig Mebrute botnet, which we'll talk about here shortly. As mentioned, like I said, Torpig took up a large piece of the pie, if you will, for the top 5 botnets that we witnessed throughout Q3. That's not really surprising. They've been one of the major drivers in botnet activity that we've witnessed for multiple quarters now here at Nuspire. They drive in waves, and a lot of the ebbs and flows that you see on that botnet chart are driven by this specific botnet. As you can see right there, the big surges up and down between Torpig, Mebrute. As that happens, that's a big driver of the botnet activity that we witnessed. Between Q2 and Q3, there was specifically a 92% increase in activity. But again, I do want to note that they were particularly quiet in Q2. So that it really kind of set the bar low to give that large increase here this quarter. Next quarter, we also will do our year in review. And so it'll be really nice to be able to kind of take a look at that and see kind of what the entire year's worth of data looks like for them. They're very skilled, though, in gathering sensitive information through key logging, screenshot captures, form extractions. They typically are spread by drive-by downloads and phishing. And with the infections, they're able to then participate in large-scale things like distributed denial of service attacks, or they can provide as initial loaders for other forms of gangs or ransomware or malware families. A newer to Nuspire's reports, although not a new botnet, is the TorrentLocker botnet. We did see a pretty big spike in late October to early September in activity from them. Although they initially emerged in 2014, specifically they were a ransomware botnet, and they mimicked things like CryptoLocker and CryptoWall, to the point of where initially security researchers believed that it was just plagiarized. What happened was that they kind of dug a little bit deeper into it and realized that they utilized a different type of encryption algorithm. Specifically, they use Randall algorithm, which is kind of uncommon. Most ransomware organizations use something like RSA 2048, and this kind of gave the ability for researchers to fingerprint this specific family of malware. They typically also are delivered via phishing. They like to use lures like invoices and package notifications and fines. Although they have had flaws in their code in the past that security researchers have discovered. In doing so, they've always been very quick to patch, if you will, their software and their code, and have been very responsive to reports that have come out about them.
So just to go over a few things, high level for botnet mitigation and response, as Josh was saying, botnet's an element of malware, a tool that's used perhaps to either distribute or control malware that's already on the system. Leveraging threat intelligence is a good way to try to combat command and control. You can use things like intelligence list of known command and control servers, keep those updated and use those in your security controls to block that activity or block those communications. The use of antivirus and firewalls is definitely help as well. They can house their own botnet list and detections within them as well from an antivirus perspective. And then threat hunting. This is more of a manual process, but can definitely be used to uncover command and control, maybe starting with malware and working backwards, understanding the communication channels that are being used, and then using that information as intel against your security controls. And so those are just a few high-level things we can do to try to mitigate botnet activity.
And so just real quick before we jump into exploits, I did see a question come in from Dale here. I do want to address because I think it's good to do it right now versus at the end of it. And he asked, why do we see so many line graph big up and down changes over time? And I'm specifically going to assume that's about Torpig. I don't know the exact answer, but my speculation and what my guess is a lot of it has to do with campaigns that they're launching. And as intelligence comes out about their campaigns that give away things of indications of compromise, like IP infrastructure that's involved with them, hashes, it's them shifting up. They're go ahead and they're releasing these campaigns. We're seeing that activity crawl up at a peak around that time. Security researchers are kind of giving away the things. They're updating their signatures, and they're pulling back to go back to the drawing board and to reformat their infrastructure and to reformat their images of malware to give off the different things to get past signatures. So then jumping into exploits, and hopefully that answered your question, Dale. And if not, please feel free to add into that. But jumping into the exploit section, we had over 78 million events that were detected, specifically 317 unique ones. And we saw a 35% decrease in total activity compared to Q2, although you can see at the end here, there's been another large push in activity. And that's why I thought it was a good time to answer this question, previously here too, is one of the reasons why we may see this large drive here. A lot of it's coming from brute force attacks on SSH and SMB and things like that. And so typically what we might be seeing here is a shift up of infrastructure as new campaigns are being launched. We did see a very loud and noisy Q2 that trailed off at the very end. The majority of Q3 was quiet before we saw that big push again here at the end. And again, that's likely a lot of restructuring by these organizations to avoid detection through threat intelligence and signature-based things. We look at our top 5 exploits, though, as we pull out the brute forcing, because it can make so much noise, it can kind of drown some of the other things that are in there. Apache Log4j becomes your top remaining exploit. And this is, again, circles back to about old technologies, because Apache Log4j's exploits been out 2-3 years now at this point. It still remains one of the top methods that we're seeing witnessed, and that's because it works. So with things like Apache Log4j, we also see buffer overflows, and remote code executions are another big one. Almost anytime we see any kind of a vulnerability involving remote code execution, you'll see it's rated high or critically, and threat actors are very much interested in it. One of the big ones that did come out, though, during Q3 was a 0-day from Microsoft Office in Windows HTML. It's tracked as 2023-36884. It was a critical rated 0-day. Attackers can use it to create malicious Microsoft Office documents and then conduct phishing campaigns. Microsoft witnessed this being done by a threat actor that they have started calling Storm 0978. And witnessed them do phishing campaigns specifically against Department of Defense, different government bodies, trying to utilize this vulnerability. There's also some ransomware organizations that have also piggybacked onto this vulnerability and begin to do it. Right after the vulnerability was announced, we did see a pretty large spike in activity that started to trend off afterwards. This vulnerability is not too dissimilar either from the one that we mentioned earlier, the 2017 one. And this is likely something that's going to be added to the threat actors toolboxes. And so as we talk about something like the Microsoft 0-day, I think it's always a good idea to circle up and mention some of the different things that came out this quarter during Patch Tuesday. There were 8 new 0-day vulnerabilities that were announced within Patch Tuesday throughout Q3. Organizations should be planning for these. It's very difficult, I think, to find anywhere an organization that doesn't use a significant amount of Windows and Microsoft products and things of that nature. And so organizations should be planning for the fact that the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Patch Tuesday is going to be released. Should be looking to see what comes out in that, what kind of announcements on new 0 days are patched. And really the organization should have some planned time to be able to implement those patches as soon as possible. When these things are announced, threat actors are immediately trying to craft exploits for these things if they've not already figured it out, because it was a 0-day, and they're going to take advantage of these. This is definitely a race against time on these, and they're monitoring when these things are being announced. You should be as well, and be ready to patch these as soon as possible.
And so kind of where it's usually not these super sophisticated new 0-day things that are catching people off guard. It's the old vulnerabilities. It's the vulnerabilities that we may have known about, but haven't got a chance to patch. And so the first bullet point here we have is patch your systems ASAP. Be a little bit faster than the guy behind you, and you're a little bit more difficult to attack. You have a less likelihood of getting the ransomwares, getting different malwares, which can stop operations and cause all kinds of financial loss. Using a firewall with IPS is a good way to detect signatures that are related to different CVEs. There's strings inside of there that we can capture. Monitoring security news vendors and security bulletins. This is very important. Knowing your tech stack is huge. Knowing the versions you're on, and then waiting and monitoring those different vendor bulletins that are the first source that you have potentially to know that there's a vulnerability out there on a system that you have. And then the last one here, again, a very easy thing to do that's sometimes overlooked is disable unused services. If you have systems that aren't using particular services, just disable them, block them, and make sure you're segregating that network properly to stop these different exploits from being successful within your environment. And I will pass it back over to Josh for Industry Spotlight.
And I'm totally stealing all the thunder out of our question and answer, but there's some good questions coming in that are applicable to the topics that we're talking about right then. Dennis asked a question, how quickly should these updates be installed and should there be some testing time? Ultimately, that decision's for your organization, but it's easy for me to say as a security practitioner, hey, apply these patches as soon as possible. But there's operational downtime that's involved. There's procedures, there's boxes that can't be shut off right away because the whole business comes to a crawling halt. What I can say and what I would recommend for a patching strategy is one, patch by criticality. What is the most critical thing that you have a vulnerability for? Look at the CVSS scoring is rated from a 1 through a 10 and grade the things that are at the top, especially the things that are in your crown jewels or your big databases, your domain controllers, and especially things that are exposed to the open internet, VPNs or any services that are exposed out where. You need to be focusing on those immediately because that's what the threat actors are going to touch first and they're going to be scanning and looking for. So as we shift over into the industry spotlight, again, we're going to talk about the hospitality sector this particular time. Hospitality sector includes hotels, restaurants, travel agencies, cruise lines. It's vital to our global economy, and it focuses on things like customers' experiences and services. Because of that and because of technology, they're always looking to do a little better by enhancing those customer experiences, especially because of competition and things of that nature, and they want to offer personalized services. So as we had this big digital transformation and this increase in injection of technology, it includes significant cybersecurity risks that come with that. And then these industries handle extensive personal and financial data. So as we see these sorts of things, we're starting to see a frequent increase of data breaches and ransomware attacks on these types of organizations because of the types of data that they're holding and because of all the different new attack vectors that are being introduced. So one of the things that we wanted to take a look at and highlight here is on the page here are the top tactics, techniques, and procedures as sourced by MITRE for the different threat actor groups that are known to target the hospitality industry. These are some of the things here that I would recommend getting into our report because we just don't have enough time to go through all of them here. But and to get an idea of, does your organization have coverage for these sorts of things? Do you have a technology or a rule set or something that would be able to detect this type of activity? They're all hyperlinked within the report there too. You can see the little T150 or 566 has got the little blue hyperlink. You can click those. It'll take you right to the MITRE page that gives you examples of threat actors that have used it and examples of what that type of stuff looks like. And then additionally here, within the report here too, you can learn more information as well. Some of the top threat actor groups that are known to target the hospitality industry. One of the ones I do want to call out here, because we're about to talk about them, is Scattered Spider there at the top of the list, or UNC 3944. Specifically, why I want to call them out is they were the leaders in the MGM attack that collaborated with Alpha V or Black Hat ransomware. So as we take a look at that, this was highly publicized here. You may have heard about it, but not know exactly what happened here. Scattered Spider, who I was just mentioning with, is actually a threat actor group of young individuals who are really good at social engineering and phishing. Their age group is expected to be somewhere between 19 and 22. So these group of 19 and 22-year-old social engineers were able to get onto LinkedIn and find a bunch of information on specifically some MGM employees. They were able to contact MGM's help desk through an attack called vishing, or phishing, but on a phone. And basically were able to persuade the help desk that they were a user that was locked out of the system. They were able to talk the help desk into refreshing or resetting their multi-factor authentication and their passwords, which then gave them access into the network. From there, they were able to launch their attack, get a foothold, and they ended up working with Black Cat Ransomware to bring them in. Because again, as we talked about before, that affiliate program, Scattered Spider is going to get to keep possibly up to 90% of the ransom from this. So after that, some of the fallout that we've seen and experienced is, there's a wide range of customer data that has been stolen, including social security numbers and passport details. MGM stock fell by 6%. Their brand trustworthiness has been impacted by this. And it really also emphasizes not only the importance of employee training, because a technological control didn't catch this. It was a person who was ultimately abused and vulnerable through this. It stresses also the need for strict verification processes for your employees if someone were to call your help desk to ask for these things to be reset. Sorry, kick back slide. I'm going to kick that forward to Justin to turn that over one more time for the conclusions and recommendations for everything here.
Yep, thank you for that, Josh. So conclusions and recommendations, educate all users and often. As Josh was speaking about the MGM attack and the user being the way that they initially got into the system, which led to huge financial loss, and it didn't come down to some fancy tool, EDR, SIM, anything like that. It was user interaction, and so that's the first one here. Second one, take a layered approach to security. There's not one vendor or device or anything like that that's going to completely protect you from everything. It is a layered approach. So assume one thing will fail and you need some other backup to be able to catch that type of activity. The third one here is patch your tech stack. As Josh was mentioning, this isn't always easy, right? You can't impact operations when a new patch comes out. You have distributed systems; they're all over the place, and so you don't know if it's going to break anything. So it's not easy, but it definitely does help. And I think the biggest thing there is prioritizing what CVEs or what exploits are externally facing or a priority to your organization. Where's the most risk lie within that application stack? Number 4, update your malware protection. A lot of systems do this automatically. You can do this through intel. If you gather intel about particular pieces of malware, you can create signatures and things of that nature. And then the last one here is segregating your high-risk devices, which starts with understanding your higher risk devices. So going through scenarios to say, if this went down, this would be this impactful, and kind of rate the risk for those devices, and create kind of prioritized list of things that are most valuable to your organization or would cost the most impact should something happen to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for a great discussion there and sharing all those highlights from our newest report. We only have about a minute left. I did want to quickly mention our next webinar on December 12th, where we'll have a very distinguished panel of experts sharing their predictions for next year. It'll be really interesting as we also plan to review their predictions from last year and see how accurate they were. So if anyone is interested in joining that, I'm going to share that link out in the chat. As well, I'm going to quickly share the link to the full threat report again, in case you were not here in the beginning, along with a link to the press release that also went out regarding the report today. So let me throw those in there too, as well as a link to our resources, complete resources section on our website. Josh, did you see Dennis's other question in the Q&A there that he asked when you were going over his first one?
I do. I see the second one here. Is there a tool that can provide service utilization to help disable services that are not being used? I can say that I'm not personally familiar by name of a tool for it, but I would think it'd be super hard pressed. My gut says yes, there's stuff out there for that. It's just not something I'm personally familiar with, unless Justin, you know of one off the top of your head.
No, not off the top of my head. I would say, from a log perspective, you may be able to just pull, top protocols that are used, do some type of protocol utilization report on your environment through your SIM or log collection tools, and figure out of all that, traffic, what protocols don't show up there, and maybe start there as kind of a quick way to start discovering popular ports that don't have any traffic on them.
Yeah, I think that's solid. And yeah, scanning your environment externally with something like Nmap, Nessus, things like that too. That'll also give you some different things that are exposed from the outside, at least, and give you an idea of some services maybe that are running that you weren't expecting. So yeah, Nessus or vulnerability scanners and stuff like that too can probably give you a good idea. That's definitely a place to get a good jumping start.
All right, thanks guys. And we are at time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. If anyone does think of any other questions, please email us at webinars@nuspire.com or contact us through our website at nuspire.com. Also, upon exiting the webinar, there is a short survey that will pop up, and we'd certainly appreciate any feedback that you have for us today. Any closing thoughts for either of you, Josh and Justin?
I'll go on my closing thought of I will be in the predictions webinar that you just plugged here a little while ago. So if you'd like to come back and join us, would certainly appreciate to see you all again.
Yep, and I don't think I have anything to add. I appreciate everybody coming to the webinar, and I hope this data has been useful for you.
Awesome. All right. Well, on behalf of Nuspire and our presenters, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.